A warm welcome to you. Thank you very much, Anthony.
Thank you. I've been in cocoa for about 13 years now, and so about half the people in this room will have seen me, or I will have seen you at some point over time. And I am going to try to say some new things to those people that have heard me before, because one of the things I am very good at is repeating myself, which is also one of the reasons I'm quite good at my job, because if you want change, you need to be persistent and keep doing it for a very long time, and I have no shame in repeating myself. So if you hear some of these things for the second or for the 25th time, I do not apologize. This is just the reality of where we're at. I'm going to be talking about living income with you, and the talk, so to speak, is called A Bigger Boat. And the reason for that is we're going to go through a whole bunch of Hollywood blockbusters from the 1970s and the 1980s, trying to find lessons that we can learn around living income and living wage. Now, I do want to ask your forgiveness beforehand for everyone that's engaged in the living wage conversation. Because I'm so deep into living income, I will often forget to say, and living wage, but the principles really are the same. So where I say living income, you should all see it as living income and living wage, not because it's not important, but because it's not as deeply ingrained in my DNA and in my vocabulary as some of these other things. So, but why is living income, living wage so important? It's the core driver of everything we do at the Voice Network. We have realized that living income must be the very first priority we go for. And if we don't get living income, all the other priorities we have are actually going to be not so important. So why is living income, why is living wage so important? And there are two main reasons why that is the case. And the first is, and this is for me the most important one, is that living income is a human right. Beyond anything else, first and foremost, there is a moral imperative to ensure that we provide a living income to everybody, full stop. Now, this moral imperative goes back in history right through the book of Leviticus in the Bible, where it says a laborer is worth his wages. And throughout history, philosophers and economists have actually been stating this time and time again, whether that's Plato or Aristotle or Thomas of Aquinas or the founder of the free market capitalist idea, Adam Smith, also said a lot of things about you need to make sure that the workers are paid properly. The laborer is worth his wages, and living income and living wage is a human right. And anybody that tries to tell you otherwise is wrong. If you disagree with me, we can have a coffee afterwards. Living income is not just a human right. It is also, and this is why a lot of you from industry are here in the room, living income is also a business imperative. It is not just that you do this because it is the right thing to do. It is that we do this to ensure the future sustainability of the commodities that we work in. This is the reason why we at Voice Network focus so strongly on living income. It is quite simply, if we don't solve the problem of living income, we're not going to solve any of the other problems that we are facing in cocoa. I often say the biggest environmental problem in cocoa is poverty. Because if you have to choose between not cutting down this old-growth tree and feeding your children that day, then you don't have a choice. It is quite simple. We must solve poverty if we want to solve deforestation, child labor, gender inequality, and all of these other issues that are facing our sectors. Living income is a business imperative, and it is also a human right. So these are the two main reasons why we need to do this. Now, I told you guys that this speech is called A Bigger Boat, and we're going to go to my first video clip here. Who knows where that quote comes from? Jaws, exactly. Jaws, a movie about a little beach town in America where all of a sudden the shark starts killing people that are swimming there. And then there's a bunch of guys that try to go find the shark. They haven't seen the shark yet, and then this happens.
Slow ahead. I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
We're going to need a bigger boat, people, because living income is actually pretty shit. That's not a sentence of mine. That's actually the director of one of the hosts of this conference. In a meeting I was with him 2 weeks ago, he said, living income is actually pretty shit if you think about it. Who of you here would like to earn just a living income? I wouldn't want my kids to earn a living income, and I actually don't think any of us here are operating on a living income line. In essence, what we are aiming for, living income, is a pretty shit finish line. It really is. Let's be very honest. So just to start this conference, where it's the first time that so many people have come together to talk about living income and living wage, actually, it's really not a very good thing that we want to be going for, is it? So let's agree before we start these next 2 days that living income is the starting point of what we want to achieve. It is not the finish line of where we want to get. It's actually a travesty that we need to say that really bare minimum level of what we want to get to is what we are here for. But let's make sure that we agree it is a starting point, and let's not make it the finish line. Congratulations, we have achieved living income. We can all go home now. No, that's when the real work starts. Okay? Can we all agree on that? Great. Now, a little bit of interaction is good, which is what I wanted to start with now, but Christian took away 2 of the 3 questions I was going to ask. I was going to ask you all, okay, so status quo. Who of you here all work in cocoa? And then I wanted to get you all to stand up. And who of you here work in coffee? But you've all done that. So thankfully, I had several other questions that I was going to ask as well. So if you guys could all stand up if you came here today using a bicycle. Who came here by bicycle? Now, we can see most of the Dutch people to some extent here. Who of you here came by car? I'm not shaming anybody, but who of you came here by car? Great. Who of you came by train? And who came by airplane? Did anybody come here by boat? Nobody came here by boat? Okay. Then here's the last one. Stand up if you think that we are actually going to achieve living income and living wage at the current speed and at the current activities that we're doing. Are we going to make it if we keep going the way we are going right now? I see that we have some optimists in the room. I like that. I really do like that, because if we don't have optimism, then we're not going to get there. But the status quo is that if we keep going the way we are going, we are not going to make it. If you look at SDG 1, the No Poverty Sustainable Development Goal, which is a lower bar than living income, in my sector, in cocoa, we're not going to make it. Not by 2030 when we're supposed to. It's just not going to happen. Not at the speed with which we're doing it at the moment. It needs to change. Now, a lot has changed already in the past years in cocoa and in many other commodities. And so now we're starting to talk about living income, and we're starting to do things. But we kind of look a little bit like this. This is Monty Python, the 1970s British comedy group.
Hello and welcome to Munich for the 27th City Olympiad, an event held traditionally every 3.7 years, which this year has brought together competitors from over 4 million different countries. And here we are at the start of the first event of the afternoon, the second semi-final of the 100 yards for people with no sense of direction. I'll just give you the competitors. Lane 1, Skolomoski of Poland. Lane 2, Zarapatik of France. Lane 3, Grobovich of the United States. Next to him, Drabble of Trinidad. Next to him, Fernandez of Spain. And in the outside lane, Borman of Brazil. Well, that was...
This really is us, people. See, we've got living income benchmarks in many of the countries we need to go to. And then we've got our interventions. And some people are working on yield per hectare, and other people would like to work on land tenure to ensure that the farms get bigger. Other people are working on whether labor is affordable or on diversification of income. And that's just about the amount of produce that you can get from one farm. And then other people are working on, well, the affordability of inputs and the affordability of labor and the affordability of credit and how much it costs to actually make your product. And then other people are working on things like, what does the community around you offer? What is the the access to market? What is the strength of the education or the healthcare and the sanitation and the drinking water and all these things that you need as well? And then other people are working on issues like price. Can the market properly value the worth of a farmer's work, etc.? Now, the answer to that last question is so far no. The market cannot properly value the work of a farmer. So far, our global agricultural commodities are a giant pyramid scheme, and the farmer is at the bottom. We are all at the top, just about. But the farmer is at the bottom. We're doing so many different things, and we're all running in different directions. And you know what? That is not per se a bad thing, because we are trying to solve a problem that we haven't solved before. And so we need creativity, we need different solutions, we need people going out there and doing different things. And that's fine. And sometimes some people actually will have seen the finish line after their sprint with no sense of direction. And when you get that, you need to start waving to the rest, hey guys, this is the way on this topic. Please follow us. And we should not just do that siloed in our own commodities. We should make sure that we actually start learning from others. I work in cocoa, have worked in cocoa for 13 years, and my goodness, we are so siloed. We have so little learning that we take from the rest of the world. And I don't know how that is with the rest of the commodities, but if we in cocoa are so navel-gazing, then maybe the rest of you guys are all having a great circle kumbaya song, but we'd like to get in on board as well, if that's possible. We really need to start looking at each other for that as well. But all of the things I was just saying, guys, all of the things I was just saying are actually technical approaches to the problem. It's tweaking a knob here, twiddling a dial there, where in essence our problem is that the next scene, we're going to show the next scene, which shows that problem. Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford, is in Cairo and he's being chased by a whole bunch of baddies, and then this happens. We've got a whole bunch of great technical solutions, like this big sword that we're waving around at all these conferences, right? We're bringing a knife to a gunfight, people, and that's not got to do per se with the size of your solutions, but it's got to do with the kind of solutions you have. There are no technical solutions to what, in essence, are political problems of distribution. And this is the core problem that we deal with when we deal with living income and living wage. It is not a technical problem that we are trying to solve. They're political problems, and they require political solutions. And we need to stop bringing these knives to the gunfight. So, what then are these political problems? I think you can categorize them into what I call the 3 R's. Now, this thinking has been stolen from Oxfam and Dalberg, who last year for the Mars Farmer Income Lab came up with a really good paper saying these are the greatest barriers to smallholder farmer income. They just, for some reason, didn't choose to alliterate it, so I grabbed their ideas and just turned it into 3 R's because it just kind of rhymes nicer. The 3 big challenges that we face, the 3 big political problems that need to be solved, revolve around risk, around the distribution of reward, and about the distribution of responsibility. And when we talk about risk, first of all, we're talking about commodities are pork cycles. Farmers basically take all the risk. We've got these boom-bust cycles that, depending on your commodity, take several years to a decade to come. I can't imagine anyone on a salary accepting a 37% salary reduction from one day to the next because the market is going badly. But this is exactly what happened to cocoa farmers 3 years ago in Côte d'Ivoire. From one day to the next, on the 1st of April 2017, the price got slashed by 37%. Tough luck for the farmer. The same year, the companies made record profits, and the CEO of Barry Callebaut, one of the largest, said that this was due to the collapse in the cocoa prices. I mean, the risks are at the farmers, but the rewards come elsewhere. My brother is a reasonably successful internet entrepreneur. He's sold 2 of his companies, has made quite a nice amount of money. He's not super rich, but he's doing well for himself, has a nice house in the inner city of Amsterdam. He's a reasonably successful internet entrepreneur. And the reason I say reasonably successful is none of you will ever have heard of the companies that he started or the companies that he works for. He's just a reasonably successful person. And he is, to all extents and purposes, a millionaire. We think that's normal in internet. A reasonably successful cocoa farmer or a reasonably successful coffee farmer, we expect to be dirt poor. There is something very wrong fundamentally with the idea that we think that farmers for our commodities actually don't deserve a reward that is fitting. We have fundamentally failed to value the work of our agricultural farmers. We really need to change that. There's something wrong with us when we think that that is the way forward. Now, one of the things that we've tried over the years is to put in place farm standards to solve some of these issues that we're dealing with. But I'm going to tell you a secret here. Farm standards are not the answer because farmers are not the problem. And all this effort and time that we've put into farm standards, into certification, etc. And just about a year ago, I was thinking about this and I realized, wait a minute, we've got it all the wrong way around. These standards require the farmer to do this and the farmer to do that and the farmer to improve, and that's not going to solve the problem. Now, the thing is yes, we need good agricultural practices. They are very, very important. Farmers do indeed need to be helped to get to a better place of farming. Let there be no mistake about that, but it should not be a fig leaf so that we can cover our inability to change what we need to change. Besides which, I would just like to point out the fact that I have yet to see a first study that convinces me that higher yields will actually lead to a higher net income, because higher yields always lead to lower prices, basic 101 economy. So higher yields cannot be the solution to poverty because the maths just doesn't add up. Yes, we need good agricultural practices, but I was talking to a Ghanaian organic cocoa farmer several years ago. I think his name was Kwame, but I'm not 100% sure anymore. And he said the next thing to me. He said, you know what the best fertilizer is? Price. Price is the best fertilizer. You pay us well, and we will make sure that we sell enough cocoa. It's as simple as that. Price, I would say, people, is the best fertilizer. And I know that the competition law thing at the beginning said we're not allowed to talk about how much we're going to pay, but we can say this. In fact, we can say a whole lot more about prices than we often think because of competition law, which is where this afternoon's session on that is going to be quite interesting for everyone that thinks, ooh, we can't talk about it. Actually, yes, you can. And you can talk about it quite a lot more than you often think. The whole thing about price and not being able to talk about competition law is a little bit like if I go to my accountant and I ask him, do I have to pay taxes? He will say, yes, of course you have to pay taxes. If I go to my accountant and I say, can you help me reduce the amount of tax I pay? You get an entirely different answer. Same thing, can we talk about price? You ask a competition lawyer, it's like, no, you can't talk about price. You say, can you help us talk about how much we pay the farmer so that he has a decent livelihood? You get a totally different question. So we need to sometimes change the way we look at this as well, which is where we come to the point of responsibility. The distribution of responsibility is all wrong at the moment. 20 years into cocoa and everything is voluntary. Everything is voluntary. You can do it if you want to. That's my theory. I think that the reason we haven't solved some of these big issues is simply we never had to. It was optional. We were allowed to. It was fine. Now, I'm not sure about you guys. I've got 4 kids, but I know that when I say, if you feel like it this week, you can clean up your room, I kind of know 3 of the 4 rooms what they will look like at the end of the week. We need to get to a place where these things become a lot more mandatory. Like I said earlier, farm standards might not be the solution, but I actually think to some extent standards for multinationals are. And there is a very simple word for standards for multinationals. Laws. We need laws to make sure that multinationals actually abide by the standards they have. The Global Compact, the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights, the OECD guidelines, the this, the that. Do you know what is the common thread between all of these? You don't have to. There is not a law that says you have to, except for in France at the moment. We need a lot more of that, and we actually need that at European level, I think, and in the United States, but with the current administration, I'm not sure we're going to get it in the States, so my hope is on Europe for now. We need laws. They are standards for multinationals, and so I would say that we need political solutions for political problems, and laws are the key building block and the first step in that. And then we start talking about change, because the thing is laws, they happen for a reason, is because things change. And system change to get there is necessary. We must find system change in this. Now the thing is most of us are incapable of thinking what system change looks like because we are in this system. And looking what the next system looks like, we don't often know. I'm going to tell you a secret here. Systems, they always will change over time. This week, 30 years ago, that the Berlin Wall fell. Now, those of you who are about as old as I am or older, remember what it was like back when the wall still stood and how incredible it was that it came down and that it came down as quickly as it did. You know, just in January of 1989, in the year it came down, Honecker, the chairman of the DDR, had said, this wall will stand for another 100 years. 9 months later, it was gone. It's amazing how quickly change can happen. And so we should not be too comfortable about this system we are in right now, because systems always change. And this last scene you see behind me is from the Planet of the Apes, where Charlton Heston, in the final scene of the movie, realizes that he isn't on a different planet, but that he is on Earth, and that system has changed. And whether you like it or not, the system that we are in at the moment will change as well. It is not just necessary, it is inevitable. And if system change is inevitable, the question then is, do you want to sit at the table or do you want to end up on the menu? And I think that's a really big challenge to all of us, because I actually believe that currently we are in a systems change for the first time in about 3 or 4 decades. Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher came in play, brought the Washington Consensus, a full-on deregulatory aspect and a drive that really changed the way we thought global economies should be structured. If you look at some of the agreements of the 60s and the 70s, they're highly centralized, government-dominated, rules, regulations, etc. Reagan and Thatcher came in and blew open this whole idea of less rules is better. We are currently in a time when that is changing, and that's exciting because these kind of system paradigm shifts only happen every other couple of decades. And so we are living in a great time, and we can choose whether we want to sit at the table or we want to be on the menu, pushing forward more regulation, higher prices, and all those things. So system change is inevitable, and it is up to us to shape what that change will look like and when that will happen. Very often I hear people say, but you know, we can't do that. System change is huge. Look at us, we're tiny. Margaret Mead, the American sociologist, said famously once that you should never underestimate the capacity of a small group of dedicated individuals to change the world. You should never underestimate the capacity of a small group of dedicated individuals to change the world. She says, in fact, it's the only thing that ever has changed the world, is a small group of dedicated individuals. We can change this, guys. I'm not sure if this still constitutes as a small group, but we are here together because we want to see living income come. And I'm trying to help us answer what does need to change for that to happen. Well, we can change the system, actually. We really can. But then we need to start looking at ourselves quite seriously. And this is where we go to the next short clip. This is from Scarface, a famous mobster movie with Al Pacino playing a Cuban refugee who becomes a big drug kingpin. He has just been in a restaurant and had a big fight with his wife. He is drunk. He is high off his rockers on his own cocaine. And then he gives a very famous speech, which we will listen to now. And I do apologize for the coarse language, but I think the point is quite interesting.
We're not gonna. You're all a bunch of fucking assholes.
Sorry.
You know why? You don't have the guts to be what you want to be. You need people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fucking fingers and say, that's the bad guy. So, what'll I make you? Good? You're not good. You just know how to hide, how to lie. Me, I don't have that problem. Me, I always tell the truth. Even when I lie. So say good night to the bad guy. Come on.
Say goodnight to the bad guy. Who of you guys know what a prisoner's dilemma is? Who of you guys know a little bit what a prisoner's dilemma is? It's an economic theory. It's a game. It says there's two guys that have been arrested for a crime that they committed together. And they are both being interviewed separately from each other, and they have options. If one of them confesses, he will go free, but the other guy gets life imprisonment. If they both confess, they both go to jail for 10 years. But if they both keep silent, they get jail for 1 year and then they both get out. Now, this is a game theory where at a certain moment you start changing the punishments until you get to the perfect equilibrium, etc. Now, I'm not saying that we should not confess our crimes. I am saying that when you are in something, a prisoner's dilemma means that if you all contribute a little bit, you can get a lot more out of it together. Prisoner's dilemmas always come at a cost. That cost is either for us as an individual or for us as a collective. But the collective costs are less than the individual costs. And so a prisoner's dilemma requires us for everyone to contribute a little bit so that we can all gain a lot. And this is why I showed this film. Because you might not see where the prisoner's dilemma and Scarface's "you need people like me, make way for the bad guy" speech comes in. But here's the point. In sustainability, in living income, we have been very good for a very long time at pointing the finger at the bad guy. We are very good at saying, there goes the bad guy. Often it's the multinational that we point the finger at. Sometimes rightly so, but if you don't have rules, then it's harder to abide by. We're very good at pointing our fingers at the others. But then the question of Scarface, what does that make you? Good? Are we really good? I mean, we're doing our best. But that doesn't mean that we're per se good. I'd like to challenge you. I'm starting to the end now, but when I'm finished and you guys go out to coffee, maybe spend some time thinking or talking to your colleagues. Okay, we can point the finger and say, there goes the bad guy, but what does that make us good? What can we do to actually contribute to this thing? Instead of always looking at what can the other guy do? Because it's really easy to point your finger and say, there goes the bad guy. Now, I'm going to just be a little bit brash here, and I was asked to also be a little bit confrontational. So I looked at all of the organizers of this conference, and I thought, a little exercise for all of the organizers of the conference, what might that look like in living income? If I look at the two governments, I would say, governments, you can look at yourself and say, so we are governments, we should govern. Where are the laws in place that are ensuring that this happens? The Dutch government has spent a lot of time on voluntary covenants, and they're starting to evaluate that. I hope that that is coupled with an idea we need to do a hell of a lot more than what we have been doing so far. The German government, if you look at the split between BMZ and BMEL as far as whether or not there is a willingness to do regulatory approaches, I think BMZ, please go talk to your friends at BMEL because they need a little bit of outreach. If I look at the standards that are co-hosting this, Fair Trade in cocoa just released a new minimum price for cocoa last month, which is a lot higher than it was. Which is great, you know, but it's still $1,000 lower than what they know they should be paying the farmers to get to a living income. And then we get to rainforest and they don't even have a minimum price. You know, there goes the bad guy. No, let's look at ourselves first, right? If I look at the NGOs that are co-hosting this, and that's my group, I'm going to be very honest, we're about as reliable as the next funding round. We're not in it to win it, we're in it to fund it, generally speaking. Now, this is not entirely fair, just as it wasn't entirely fair to the rest of you, but we are. We're about as reliable as the next funding round. There's a new funding round coming up, so this is a problem. This really is a problem. We've all got the things that we need to look at and we need to improve. We're in this together. It's going to cost us all something. So does this make us good? No. Well, then what does make us good? Let's try to stop hiding the things that we know we should be doing better, and let's start bringing that into the light as well. Now, here's where I'm going to start ending, because it is also a happy story. I'm not just here to kick you guys in the behind. I'm also here to give a little bit of inspiration because I believe it can be done if we work together and if we do this with the right tools. We need better laws. We need higher prices. We need good agricultural practices. We need transparency and accountability throughout the supply chain. We need farmer organization. That's my timer saying that my time is done. We're almost there. With the right tools, we can get there. So to summarize, we need a bigger boat. Living income should be the starting point for these conversations, never the final ambition. We need to stop bringing a knife to a gunfight, and we need to start finding the true political solutions to the political problems that we're facing. 3, change is inevitable. Get a seat at the table or find yourself on the menu. And we are actually all the bad guys, so let's stop pointing fingers and let's change ourselves. And with that, I want to end with one last film. I have spent the last 14 years in cocoa, and I have seen everything change, except for the fact that the farmers are still poor, the forests are still being cut down, and the children are still working. But I have seen such a big change in the sector, and I believe that that change was also one of the things we need to go forward. Together with the 4 lessons I gave there, we all must change. And I'm going to end that with, we've gone through all these 70s and 80s movies, and we need to end with a feel-good 1980s big applause ending. So this is Rocky IV, where Rocky Balboa has just beat the crap out of a Russian fighter in Moscow, and he starts talking about change. Thank you very much.
I came here tonight, and I didn't know what to expect.
Когда я вышел этим вечером на этот ринг,
I seen a lot of people hating me, and I didn't know what to feel about that, so I guess I didn't like you much, none either.
я думаю, что я не любил их тоже.
During this fight, I seen a lot of changing.
В течение всего этого боя я понял, что многое изменилось.
The way you felt about me and the way I felt about you.
И я почувствовал, что вы тоже изменились.
In here, there were 2 guys killing each other. But I guess that's better than 20 million.
То я думаю, что это лучше, чем даже 20 миллионов долларов.
So what I was trying to say is that if I can change,
Я думаю, что каждый тоже изменился
and
сегодня.
you can change,
Вы можете измениться.
everybody can change.
Каждый может измениться.
If I can change, and I want to change, guys, and if you want to change, then we can really make the difference. Let's spend the next 2 days thinking about where we change. Let's spend the next 2 days not pointing the finger at the bad guy, but looking at what is my job in making this work. And then we might actually just pull this one off. And wouldn't that be great? Ending poverty. I don't know about you guys, but that to me is the biggest challenge in the world, to end poverty in commodities. The acronym for that is EPIC, and it is an epic task at hand. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Anthony, thank you very much for this speech.